Now, I'm flipping through Mike Valla's favorite flies for the Catskills earlier today, and I come across a pattern that I didn't catch my first time looking through this book, and it stood out to me because it's not a typical fly that you think of when you think of Catskill fly patterns. And the pattern is called, seriously, the Fluffy Nymphy Emerger Thingy. I know you probably thought I just made up some crazy title for this video, but no, that's what the fly's called. Now, it was created by Ted Patlen, and Valla didn't say what year he'd created it, but he said he'd been tying it for at least 25 years. This book was published in 2020, so it leads me to believe it was probably created sometime in the 1990s. Now, I've never tied this pattern, never even fished it, but oh man, I love this thing already. And there are a lot of things to love about this pattern. It's a really easy tie, no exotic materials. In fact, the recipe says things like, for the hook, use a dry fly or a wet fly hook or a long shank or a short shank. So basically any kind of hook you want. And for the tail, it says some pheasant tail fibers or the material of your choice. And the body says pheasant tail fibers or peacock herl or the material of your choice. And the wing, that's just something else. It says the fluffy fibers at the base of any hackle feather, any color. So really, you can make this fly with just about anything, and you can kind of use scrap materials, a lot of the materials that we end up throwing out. So if I had created this pattern, I think I would have just called it the cheap and easy, because it's really cost next to nothing, pretty much the price of a hook, and it's really an easy tie. And it's not often that when I'm tying a new pattern for this show that I sit down and actually tie about a dozen or so of them, but I did for this one. I filled up a whole row in my nymph box of this pattern. Now, I did make one adjustment. I tied about half of them exactly as the recipe says, but I did leave the flash out for about half of them because a lot of times I like to fish my nymphs without much flash. But this is a really cool, super simple pattern, and I just know this thing's going to be a fish catcher. I think y'all are going to like it. Let's give it a shot. So there it is in the vise, a Fluffy Nymphy Emerger Thingy. Now this is one without the flash in it, so I'm going to show you both ways. Here's without the flash, and the one we're about to tie will have the flash in it. And I'm using a generic curve shank hook. This is a 3X long. I'll show you the package here in just a second. It's one I use for so many flies. It's a great, pretty generic hook. It's the J. Stockard 430 multi-use curve. Comes in as small as a 20, maybe even a 22, and as big as a 4. So I'll use it for lots of hoppers and lots of nymphs and really just all kinds of patterns. I'm going to use olive thread, but again, use any thread you want on this guy. Let's take a base all the way back. Now let's take 4 or 5 strands of pheasant tail fibers. Not real long, I'd say a little bit longer than a hook gap. It's not a tiny tail. Let's catch it in with 2 wraps right here. And check our position, see if we've got enough. Yep, we do. And I got one of them sticking up. I don't want that. There we go, that'll work. Okay, let's go one more wrap right on top. Now take our thread up here to the front. You can take it almost all the way up. There's not a whole lot going on up front. Now we're gonna wrap this almost like do a classic pheasant tail. So you can spin it together if you want, or you can leave them kind of, knot together and do it where these wraps just lay parallel to each other all the way down. Kind of up to you, but just go ahead and make your body all the way up to the front. Okay, let's snip this excess off and put a couple of extra wraps to lock it in, then we'll catch in a throat. Or legs, if you want to call them that. And it's just any kind of mottled duck. Could be partridge or anything like that. I think this light color looks pretty good on it, so I'm going to take about 10 or 12 of these fibers. I think this is going to be enough right here. Let's just catch this in on the underside. And how long you want it, kind of your preference. I think it's looked good going about to the point of the hook. So let's see that right there. Yeah, it's a little bit past the point of the hook, but I still think that looks good. So let's go ahead and lock this in, trim this excess. Now for this one, we are going to put the flash. So really thin, small crystal flash, but keep in mind this stuff will overpower your fly if you're not careful. You might think, oh, I could get away with 6 strands of this. It's not too flashy or too big, but you might be wrong. So I'm only going to do 2. And that's what the recipe does say. Even though the picture in the book looked like it had about 4, it did say just 2. So let's go ahead and snip this off right there. That's about how long our wing is going to be. And the wing on this, anything, any hackle, fiber, feather, just take some of this fluff off the bottom. Some of the stuff that we rarely ever use. So let's go with about this much right here. It does kind of remind you of a gimp feather, and I'm sure you could use a gimp feather for this, but let's just catch it in, maybe a length of a body, maybe a little bit short. I wouldn't really want to go longer than the body. But let's catch this in with a pinch wrap right there and see what we've got. Okay, I think we're going to be fine right there. That might be a little thicker than I want, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and finish it and check it out. Yeah, that's kind of fluffy, and my head's getting to be a little bit of a mess. But let's see if we can fix that. Just take your thread right back to the eye. And this is really soft and light feather, so it'll compact down pretty well. And we're tying this, it's a nymph, so don't be afraid to get a decent little head here. Okay, I think that's fine right there. Let's finish it and see if we have any cleanup. You know what? I'm not doing any cleanup. That wing right there is probably a little bit bigger than most of them I've been making today, but I'm gonna leave it, and I think this is gonna fish just great. So drop a head cement, and this is going in my box. So that's it, my friends. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.